Josh.
I'm Josh.
And I'm not Josh, but together we are
Joshing around in air. Love it. Right, Josh is actually already up. He's about to crack open our drink for today. Love that.
Oh, professionally done.
That was, I mean, there was even like a little bit of like mist that came out of the bottle. That was fantastic.
Well, it was the flourish as his arms sort of swept up like
this is a man who's worked in a pub. Do you know what I mean? Right, Josh, what are you pouring out for us today, my friend? I realise you're nowhere near a mic. What, a Birra Moretti?
Birra Moretti.
Thank you. Oh God, nice. Sam's just pouring his out.
Yeah, I got loads in there. You should have.
Solid.
Well, I thought, usually you go last and get nothing, so...
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Generous.
Right, well, cheers, gents.
Cheers. Or Prost for our
Prost.
German listeners.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
by marriage. And then
exactly. The knowledge of a man married to a German.
We weren't making eye contact when we did that, though. Isn't that bad luck to say Prost without making eye contact?
At this point, I've already got so much bad luck, I'm just staring into it. I mean, you lot have seen how I roll my dice.
I think it's unlucky to be superstitious.
Well, some would say it's superstitious to be unlucky.
Doesn't even make any sense.
Also, my beer really, like, I get the smell of the WKD that was last time, and now I'm getting the beer. Right, well, on that lovely note, should we do our listener question for this week? I'm saying week as if we're not recording all three of these podcasts in the same day, but for the listener, I believe it will be a different week. So, here we go. Hey guys, I was curious about how and when you choose to deploy the units you do. Is it more reactionary, or do you go in with a plan that you are going to deploy in a certain way? Cheers, your 8th biggest fan. Love it. I wonder what makes him 8th. Like, does he know the other 7 fans that are ahead of him? And they're kind of, in communication with each other, and they just self-rank?
I think it's probably more an educated guess.
Sure.
I've met him and so know that he is on the more slender side than some wargaming fans are. And so maybe he is the 8th biggest, but it's just not in terms of his passion. It's
nice.
In terms of,
okay.
All right.
Oh, I guess that means I'm on number 1 biggest fan.
There'll probably be some competition, so
that is true. Shout out to all you fellas. Got a lot of love for you.
From one larger man to another.
Yeah. Right.
So, deployment tactics.
So I think basically the gist of the question seems to be, how are you placing units? What do you base that on? Which side of the board are you putting stuff on when it comes in from reinforcements? And like, do you have a game plan before you go in, or do you just kind of react to what's happening on the board? I mean, my answer will be kind of a bit of a both. So I think if there's so it's very much based on the objective, the scenario we're playing. So if I want to keep someone off an objective, I will deploy my light units that are going to be in combat. So basically my mounted squires, I will deploy them as far up the board as possible. I'll sit them in front of an objective. If not, I'm charging into an enemy unit on turn 2 or 3. If there's an objective zone, an objective marker that I've got to destroy, I'll just chuck my court squires. Sorry, I keep saying court squires. They're not a thing anymore. They just got rid of that stat line. They aren't mount squires. I'll just put them straight into the objective, so I can score those points and kill off that objective marker. I know some people will have a certain army list where they're like, right, I want this thing to come out first, this thing goes behind them, this thing then runs in front of them. So sometimes I'm thinking about that. So I'll often, if I put out my household knights, but I want my Ashen Dawn to get out somewhere faster than the Household Knights, I would actually hold my Household Knights back a little bit, just enough for a base, so that I can then, when they run on, because they got the same movement stat, the Household Knight and the Ashen Dawn is 7 each. So I'll put my, instead of 14 inches or 15 inches with a standard bearer up the board for my Household Knights, I'll actually put them like 10 inches up the board. So then the Ashen Dawn can run in front and sit in front and block any charges that could then happen. So yeah, it just kind of depends. It depends on what your unit does. It depends on the scenario. It depends on your game plan.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
I think a lot of what I do is reactionary. I mean, that's probably a fair comment to make about my entire approach from beginning to end.
Yeah.
I do like to think there's an objective marker. I'm going to try and send my heavy monster into it.
Yeah,
because then
great at doing that.
That's the easiest way to get rid of it, and then I don't feel like I'm losing a unit for several turns as they're doing the damage. I definitely think there are some units which have got like a buffing character in them. And so that whole thing of I'll make sure that they've got something that's in front of them so that they're not going to die off the second turn they're on the board.
Sure.
I think that's important. And I've become a fan in the last few months, and I'm sure that you've noticed it or not noticed it at all because I'm so ineffective at it, about kind of loading things onto one side of the table so that then I'm choosing what I'm sending in which direction.
Okay.
And so that's a bit more of a strategic decision around sort of where I'm bringing the units on. But that does mean sometimes my stuff gets trapped.
Right, you get that roadblock, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little bit harder for us when we play at yours because we've only got a 4x4 board, whereas when you got a 4x6, you got all the room you need to be able to do that sort of thing, right? But yeah, that's interesting. So what I did describe about how I'd like to set up my units is definitely a sort of a perfect scenario, which never ends up happening. And I feel like you, Sam, I do feel a little bit reactionary in a lot of what I do, which is not necessarily a bad thing because you want to react to what's going on, right? And often, like when you do card order, you'll put your characters first so that you can see what the enemy's going to do, right? So you can then react to that. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
At all. Go on, Josh. What do you do?
I think it depends a little bit what faction you play. So I think having played two factions, like when I was Nords, I felt often I was the more aggressive one. And so I felt often there other people are reacting to me. So I'm like going out with the game plan, then they're often reacting to me. Like, I don't know. If I'm comparing to chess, I feel like I was the white player. I make the first move and it's then on them to respond.
And so often...
So yeah, I often felt like I had a game plan, like especially the ways to kind of do hammer and anvil of like, right, I've got these anvils, I'd like think of the scenario, I want to get them, this anvil here, I'm going to run these guys in between. And then maybe on like the later turns, I might be slightly more reactionary. But I remember there, I felt like, I was going first. I wanted to kind of like hold the board and then make you try and respond to what I was doing. Whereas Old Dominion being a bit slower, it probably is a little bit more reactionary. But having said that, I do usually also have a bit of a game plan. So like my 1500 point army I was playing with recently, I knew I always wanted the Hierodeacon to come out turn 2 because I wanted to straight away start getting spells. So it meant it was always going to be, Thorn Divinity turn 1, start getting the tokens a turn from the Warlord. It was always going to be the Hierodeacon turn 2 to start getting the spells, which meant I could get the army guaranteed to tier 2 by turn 4.
Right.
And so it meant even sometimes I was leaving bigger bricks off the army and more valuable stuff, bringing them on later turns. But I just had this order of, I knew that was kind of how I wanted to start the game.
Yeah.
But then sometimes as it went on, I'd be picking between different heavies depending on what's going on the board. Do I need, is there somewhere I want to send a brick, or do I want a smaller like MSU that needs to weave in between something? So I think, it depends a bit what you're playing. If you're playing something faster, I think you want to have a game plan and like see how they respond. If you're playing something slower, often you want to have maybe still a rough game plan, but go with a little more flexibility depending on what they do. And definitely being aware of what your regiments are strong against and weak against, I think is a good thing as well.
Yep, I can imagine.
So you see something on the other side that's like heavy in cleave and you've got a regiment that's higher in evasion, you would want to consider putting that side of the board. I don't know. You see something that's not got any cleave and it's just like lots of attacks, and you've got some with high defense or some with blessed or something like that. You know, you want to kind of know what regiments are going to match up well against what other regiments and try and, if you're being reactionary, send them that way, which is always a bit fun. I know in our games, like my Varangian Guard, if I see Ashen Dawn, I want to send my Varangian Guard down the same side of the board. I know that's
I'm
just
trying
me.
to avoid those.
Bit cat and mouse there, but that's my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think you've just triggered a couple of extra thoughts in me. One is there's often a supremacy ability that'll say something like it's active so long as your warlord is on the battlefield, or an army rule that has that. And so I'm thinking, my Ferromancer, to get that regen, Ferromancer has to be on the battlefield, and so I want him on early and I want him to stay on as long as possible. And so depending on the list, I'm going to be bearing that in mind. And then when I'm choosing my auto units to bring on, I had been delaying bringing on my Strix until much later in the game, but when I'm now first able to bring on a heavy unit, it's basically, what's the favorite one that I want to get onto the table to make the biggest difference. I tend to push that on as early as possible. Maybe I think you're right. With different factions, that's not always the right choice to make, because if you're a slower moving army, actually maybe holding something back so that you can react better. Not necessarily slower moving, but late game army, holding something back so that you're then controlling what you want to after you've seen other placement. Can't get it right, basically. That's my conclusion.
Actually, I found it interesting what you said about wanting to bring on your Ferromancer. If he's a warlord, you want him to bring him on early so you get the ability, but also you want to keep him alive. Do you find that a difficult thing to balance, or do you think generally you're able to keep him around?
Well, definitely. I've been thinking about the way that I played the list that we took the Southampton as opposed to the one that I ran at LGT, where I was using the same army rule and so same warlord. And the way I played that in Southampton was, lower points list. I was doing half the army, to bring on Bertha. Yeah. And so actually the only way I could really play it is stick him in with a big block of force-grown drones, which puts him on the front line. And therefore he died earlier in every game. Whereas at LGT, I had him just with an MSU of force-grown drones, but I had 3 blocks of 8 force-grown drones.
Yeah.
Or was it? Well, anyway, I had a whole bunch of bigger blocks that were right in front of him. And so my entire game was basically bring the Ferromancer on behind this much harder to destroy line. And then he's using accelerated hibernation to heal them back when they're getting hurt. He's causing them to reroll their failed resolves as well because they're close enough to him. And so that, in all of but one of the games, that worked really well for me there.
Right, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that thing where he makes everything around him reroll resolves really sucks.
I love that army rule.
It's brilliant.
So much. It's so good, yeah.
Because I find often you'll stick him kind of in the melee, but he's in with like brute drones or force-grown drones that just keep coming back. Everything's coming back and I can't kill everything because A, you keep healing, and B, you're not taking resolves. So I'm just like, oh, this just sucks. Like I can't do what I need to do. And so like, I feel like as spies, you love getting into the grind fest, right? You're like, I don't care about charging. I don't care about doing all of this, apart from a few situations like your Centaur Avatar, right? But like, otherwise you're just like, I'm just going to sit on this objective and you can come and grind at me as much as you like. But unless you kill me off, I'm going to stay here.
Well, I think they're more there as a distraction tactic.
Okay.
Even Ferromancer, Biomancer as well, they're in with lots of force-grown drones. They're all light, so they can't score. For the purposes of playing a scenario, they're actually, there's no real purpose to them.
Sure.
But because they can get They can move relatively fast, especially when you buff them up a little bit. Stick them fighting against something, and they're just going to sit there and just slog it out for several turns.
Yeah.
The fact that the Ferromancer is light means that you don't sort of feel obliged to put him on an objective zone, so he can just go where it makes most sense for the army.
So you kind of, that burden's taken off of you then. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. But it's interesting, you'll probably end up going onto objectives anyway, just because that's
fill
where...
the space. Yeah.
Because you don't want them scoring, or you want to contest, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's really cool. Nice. So I wanted to move on to the main topic of our episode, which is on how we find losing and how we cope with that, how we lose well. I think, war games are they're real fun, but sometimes you lose and you're like, oh, okay, that was, I lost a little bit, but I feel like there's a few decisions I could have made. And then sometimes you just get absolutely smashed and you're just like, I want to go home and like hug my dog. I don't even have a dog and I want to hug it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just sometimes sucks. And I think it's weird. I find it a strange dichotomy because I absolutely love playing Conquest. I love hanging out with you guys. But I also feel like I'm a really bad loser. When I lose, I just like feel so rubbish. And like, I think it's a very short term feeling rubbish, but it is a thing that's there. It is a thing that kind of like feels quite real for me. And it's like this thing that I love has now caused me like pain. I'm just like, I feel strange. So it's like, I don't know. I think we have, I'm sure we've all got examples we can bring to the table. I think one time that, Sam will remember is I went round his to play a game of Conquest. It was my 100 Kingdoms versus your Spires. I think at the beginning you got a lot of sort of board presence on the table. Your Stricts were up doing things, and it was just like, it was going really well for you. And I think it wasn't decided by any sort of means, but I was just like, I was already feeling the sort of thing. And it was only like turn 3 or turn 4. And I was just like, I can already feel this game is slipping away from me.
There's some unlucky rolling and stuff as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that to consider. But I think I'd made a lot of decisions that kind of, in your head, you're like, this seems like the right thing to do. But then actually, when it plays out and in hindsight, you're just like, why? Like, why did I do that? Like, that makes no sense. And it culminated at a point where I brought my Ashen Dawn on and my Crimson Tower. And what I should have done is just put my Ashen Dawn up as far as possible. I think I chose not to charge them or something like that. No, I brought them up, but I didn't bring them up as far as they possibly could have. I just sat them at the back of the board because I was like, right, I kind of want to be able to like stop you from charging if you can. And so they're actually further back than the Crimson Tower, which you don't want to do. You want your Ashen Dawn to take the charge while the Crimson Tower does the charge. And you're already right up in my board space. And I think you end up winning the next supremacy. And I'm like, right, okay. And I expect you to do one thing, but what ends up happening is you activate your brute drones. And they're in a place where I don't kind of really expect to get charged. And so you charge out of some water. And I think you had line of sight, so you're just able to do it. I know we spoke about it afterwards, and I think, maybe there was a couple of things that might not have been able to happen. But to be honest, you ended up being able to do it. You rolled for the charge and managed to get it, and you just slammed into my Crimson Tower, and my Ashen Dawn were just stuck behind the Crimson Tower, and I was just like, like that's not the way around you want that. That is not the way around you want that. So these guys are just like, you do a bunch of impacts and take them off, and I think you killed them, but they were essentially made useless. They were like broken and had like a few wounds left on one guy with the Warlord. And I was just like, right, this is like, I've got nothing else to throw at you. I think I had some Steel Legion kind of hanging around, not really doing anything. And it just felt like everything in the game had not gone my way. And I think then at one point, I think it might have actually happened earlier when I first brought on my Ashen Dawn, but one of them like fell off the table and like smashed all over the floor. And it was like an Ashen Dawn.
Properly. It wasn't just like, the tails come off. It was in 6, 7, 8 pieces easily.
Yeah. And it was, it was funny. It was actually because Josh had let me borrow, use some of his basing magnet stuff. and you have a big washer that you put on your brute stands that makes them really heavy. I'm like, so it feels nice when you're playing them. You're like, oh yeah, Ashen Dawn. When it dropped to the floor, it just smashed. I was just like, oh, this feels awful. So I was losing. I think I'd had a really hard day at work as well or something. And so it's like the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And like Sam could see it in my face that I was just like not having a good time.
Bless
you, you were really kind, but like, I think we called it really early, right? And I went home at like, I think the earliest I've ever come home from a Conquest night, it was like, I don't know, something like 10 o'clock. And I was like, whoa, this is, I'm actually getting my 8 hours in. But yeah, so I found that an interesting experience because I think I felt that in small amounts when I'd lost before. But I think because I'd lost so badly, all I could think about is just like, how I'd like not made decisions well and how, but I was also like, oh, is the list even worth it? Like, I was at the point where I was just like, do I just like, no, I wasn't at the point where I was like, do I sell my army? But I was like considering like certainly not playing for a little while because I was just like, if this is how it makes me feel, then why would I even bother, right? And so, you know, a few days pass and I end up having a couple of text conversations with you, Sam, and I think we're just like, it ends up being all right. I glue my Ashen Dawn back together and it's all okay. We play a few more games later on and it's fine. But yeah, I think for that moment, it's like, you do have a little bit of sadness and it's like, it's okay to acknowledge that. And then sort of just like, do your best to kind of learn from that for your next game, right? Because I feel like sometimes I lose games and I like come away feeling pretty good because I'm like, oh, actually, I've made some good decisions and I lost because of this thing. And I know what that thing is and I can do it and I can make sure I don't do it next time. But I think what I came away with that game we played, Sam, is that I came away and I just didn't know really what went wrong because it felt like such a blur and I was just like, so many things went wrong that I'm just like, you know, should I even be playing this game in the first place? It's like I'd played chess and like just moved pawns the whole game. Like, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think it's definitely something that in hindsight, you can definitely learn more from like losses than you can from wins, but it's a whole lot more fun winning.
Yeah. Gosh, that's hard to listen to, isn't it? It wasn't a pleasant evening to be on. It wasn't a fun.
Yeah, I felt bad for you as well, having to like, because I wanted to like, you know, obviously you'd invited me around your home and we're playing Conquest and like we want to have a good night, but it just not panned out that way really.
It is this tricky thing where it's like winning is the game, you know, winning is an inherent motivator in playing the game. Like you're scoring points is, you know, it's very clear at the end of the game who has won and who has lost. It's extremely rare to draw a game of Conquest.
Oh yeah, you basically never do it. Yeah.
So it's, you know, you pull together an army list that you're hoping will be competitive. Even if you're doing it for fun, you still want, you know, it's still kind of part of your thinking. You're making decisions during the game in order to try to win. So when you're not, it's not, you know, it's just not a fun place to be in, especially when you can just see no hope. Where you try something.
Turn 2, it's already decided. You're like, oh.
Yeah, and that game, it was really one-sided. But often in our games, it does feel one-sided that early in the game. You know, I do tend to score faster with that list.
Yeah.
And yeah, you had rolled, unluckily, I was ahead on points. I did this rule, this charge, which was probably illegal. At the time, my understanding of the rules was one thing, and then this just happens, and you then sort of double check and go, oh, no, okay, I was completely wrong, actually, in hindsight. And so I probably shouldn't have been able to do that in the way that I did. And then at that point, I don't know if the game was kind of over because I think I'd moved off the objective in order to try to get you. And so maybe there was still a chance to come back.
Perhaps.
But it isn't fun to go out with a list and, you know, you just feel like I've tried this, and I've tried this different thing, I've tried this different thing, and my dice aren't working for me and it's just all going wrong.
Yeah.
And then it's never fun to break a model.
No.
And especially
a model is expensive as that one.
Yes. An Ashen Dawn, this is meant to be the best thing that I put on the table. And
but they even call it a premium cavalry regiment on the box, you know?
Nice. So, yeah, I've experienced, I think as a general rule, I do sort of go out expecting to lose.
Okay.
And so I think when I do lose, I'm not, there's no sort of surprise in it. And particularly playing against you, Josh, there's this definite sort of, I'm up against Josh.
This guy's a
how am I going to lose this time? Yeah. When we went to the first LGT, that was, I played a game there and I didn't really enjoy that. And that was a long day. I think that there had been this idea that we were going to get fed at some point. So I hadn't brought any food. I hadn't then gone and bought food because I thought, we're going to be getting fed. So I was hungry. I was tired. I was playing against somebody who was good at the game and I was still making some basic mistakes. We were using this terrain that I wasn't. We'd always just played with impassable terrain, and so every charge I was doing, I wasn't getting my impact hits.
Did we play the last game? Oh, was this sorry?
Yeah. So the game before that last game, I was up against this 100 Kingdoms list using characters that I hadn't really played against before, and so he just kept on doing damage to me in ways I wasn't familiar with. Yeah. And I just lost the game, and it was just a normal game. I think he had fun, good for him.
Yeah.
And I got matched up against you in that last game, and I just thought, thank goodness, I don't have to pretend to be friendly.
No, yeah. I remember you were not like 100%. Then I was like, bless you, let's just get this game done.
I'm just tired. Let's play a game. I mean, you won that game, and I just remember thinking, jolly good. Let's just call it now. So, yeah, I think there's. You said, you had a bad day at work. I think when we're in a bad place emotionally, sort of coming into a game, I think that does affect things. You just want,
for sure.
Like I've had everything else in my life is going wrong. Can I please just roll some ones? Because that would just make this thing better. And this is meant to be fun.
I think there's a podcast somewhere for that.
Oh yeah, that's good.
What is it about rolling dice badly that if your day's like been even slightly bad, and then you like play Conquest in the evening, and you feel like you're constantly rolling badly. It just in that moment it feels like the world's against you.
Yeah. Also, I feel like because you're constantly thinking about like what's the average dice roll, so you in your head know what the average dice roll is. So whenever you roll bad, like you're just like you immediately know what's up. Whereas I feel like sometimes, I don't know, I feel like I can be a bit ignorant of them sometimes. I just kind of expect to like get a bad roll, whereas you're like, statistically, that is terrible. Yeah.
So what's the solution, to play competitively so that you can actually go and perform well and sort of enjoy beating people? I mean, that is part of the experience. And then when it doesn't go well, respond positively.
I mean, Josh, I think you might be able to put some light on this because I think actually, was it the first LGT? You actually played David Richardson, didn't you? I remember you saying he lost the game, I think, but you guys just had a ton of fun. I remember you were like, this is really fun to play against him. And I remember you saying you were a bit gutted in the second LGT that you didn't manage to play against him again.
Oh, I really wanted to. I think I really love what he does in terms of like, especially, last LGT with his massive 20 block. I think sometimes like you can have fun losing when like you're like, sometimes your goal's not always to win, like it's to like pull something crazy off. Yeah. And I think he definitely does that. Like he just knows, look, this list is just going to be funny. Yeah. And so whether or not he wins or loses, he's like, you get to see someone sweat as they're like, how do I deal with this thing I've never seen before? Yeah. And so I remember when I played against him, it's just, I think like obviously you want to play to the rules, and it feels like if anyone's doing something like super unfair, you want to be like not rule breaking, but like I think sometimes like when you're playing against people as well, and there's like a little bit of a like a little bit of bending, like you're not like following to the letter of the law. I think sometimes that's friendly. Like, I remember in the first one, like I'd moved a unit up and I knew it should be in the bubble, but I'd put it like a centimetre too far to the left. And he was like, oh, I know you were trying to get it in there, just move it a centimetre to the right.
Nice.
Stuff like that. And I think like when you are not as like, when you're not being like that militant with the rules, like you're still trying to get the heart of the rules and you're still trying to follow it and not like do stuff that makes the game really unfair. But that also just relaxes the atmosphere because you're like, okay, like then it feels like both of us obviously want to win doing it for fun, but also like you feel like you're less, I'm not taking it like ultra seriously, like, you know.
Right, yeah. You can actually have a game and enjoy it, yeah.
I think maybe there's part of it, you see, that talk about that being militant with the rules, when it's obvious, like I'm making this decision in order to land in the objective zone and I've just measured it wrong. Because I was trying to do it by eye and, you know, if I had got my measuring tape out, I would have probably got that in. That just feels like that's fair. And I don't know how much we sort of say out loud what we're trying to do with our units. You know, there's this sort of idea, the fog of war, about, I'm going to put it here because what I'm secretly thinking is I'm going to try and do this next turn. And some of that we want to keep secret. But in that instance, you hadn't said it, but maybe if you had said, I'm going to put my Crimson Tower here because I want to hold them in a position where I can't get charged by your brute drones.
Yeah, sure.
And then we're sort of vocalizing, therefore this is not going to happen next turn, even if you win the supremacy roll, at which point we could have a discussion where like there's nothing on the line here at the moment. We're just talking, oh, well, if you want to position it there, actually you are kind of in line of sight. Why don't you shift it across? Because then when we're in the next turn and we've rolled and now we're measuring for the charge, you're not thinking, well, if I'd have known that was a chance of that happening, I would never have done that. And so now the game's falling apart.
So I think that's what they call, so more seasoned wargamers than us will call that playing by intent, right? So you make a move. My intent is if I sit on the objective in such a way that I cannot get shot by your unit of longbowmen, right? So it's just like, even if you put them slightly in a little bit of a wrong place and you're like, you measure from a slightly different angle and you're like, oh, actually they are slightly in, because you vocalize that to your opponent, they know actually that, okay, even if you have put them like half an inch inside the range, what you meant to do is put them half an inch back. And so you can just go, move your model a little bit back. And you're just kind of like, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's always a much better way of playing. And like you say, it just relaxes the atmosphere, Josh, doesn't it?
And I've sometimes done that against you. Like my Fawn Divinity, I know I've like had it behind and I've like snuck it like half a thing out. But I'm like, and I don't know whether we were playing it right, but I was like, like my understanding was, I think like because it's only half out, you'd have to charge the thing in front because you can't fully get in contact the front. And you're like, maybe that's right or not right, but like almost like something like, look, can we agree that that's like my intention? If you don't think it's like fair that you think you should be able to hit it, then that's fine. I won't move it like that. Or sometimes like, I'm going to move it to here with my intentions to go for this next turn. And then like, especially some things where, you know, we have been foggy on the rules in the past. I might say, right, I'm moving it here with my intention to do this. Like, do you think that's fair? And if, you know, people say, that's not fair, I'm like, okay, then I won't do that move. Because what I don't want to do is next turn try and do that. And you go, oh, no, you definitely can't do that. And I was like, I thought I could kind of thing. So I think that can definitely help. And as we said earlier, like having fun lists where you want to do dumb stuff can sometimes be fun as well. And
well, that's a really good example of that, actually. At the tournament in Southampton, the guy who I'm calling Phil.
Yes. Big Phil. Sorry, did that.
We were playing Forlorn Hope, and in the words in the scenario pack, what it says is you score points for destroying an enemy objective marker.
Yeah.
And there are 2 objective markers. So the way that we've always played that is, well, the one closest to you is your friendly one, and the one furthest away is your enemy one. And it turns out it's not how you're meant to read it, that they're both neutral and therefore you consider them both enemy. I think take out the word enemy then, just you get points for destroying an objective marker. That feels much clearer.
It also feels so much better because it's been so annoying for us calling it a friendly stand, and then sometimes with like not being able to get past it or something because we've treated it like a friendly stand.
Yeah. Yes, all the time. Yeah.
I've had it where Sam's like attacking the other side, and I'm like, well, I can't also attack it because it's friendly, so I just have to sit here and wait for him to kill it so I can like get through to him. And we've had some really dumb moments where I'm like, we probably should have clocked earlier that that's not how you should treat it.
Well, anyway, I had put my Siegebreaker Behemoth on the side of the table because he had bone golems coming in right in the middle of the table opposite, and I was thinking, I'm going to come into the side if I can reach the bone golems. There was a piece of terrain in the middle. And then he said, I'm going to charge this objective marker. And I said, well, that's your friendly one. You've got to come and attack this one. And he said, no, and blah, blah, blah. I went and got David and clarified, okay, they're both there. And his instinctive reaction was, would you have done anything different if you had known? And I thought, well, yeah, I would have used my Siegebreaker to go and attack that objective marker because I know it's going to kill it in a turn. Yeah. So, yeah, I would put it in the middle instead. And that sort of immediately diffused the situation where I'm now feeling like, I'm now being put at a disadvantage. That's just a kind thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a nice way to play.
100%. If someone has had an idea for something and they thought, if I do this, then this can't happen. But then there's a rule or something that they didn't understand that then meant that thing could happen. And it happens, it kind of feels it's just a kind of feels bad moment. So you want to try and mitigate that in your games as much as possible.
That's well, I was actually thinking that LGT, like the one where in the end, like it didn't happen because David said he couldn't charge through. But like, when he said, my intention was to charge through, I was thinking, like I would have saved Blessed if I had known you were going to charge through.
Yeah.
And so like, I think if David hadn't have come over and said, you can't do it, I might have said, okay, let's a compromise, take the stand off the other side like you would have liked to have done. Yeah. But then like, I would have saved Blessed if I'd like, because obviously I can know whether you can charge or not. Yeah. And then that could be okay, like I get what you were trying to do. That does make sense. But then also I would have reacted differently to it. And then sometimes even there you can do stuff where you're like, okay, I get what you were trying to go for and you've like, made a slight mistake or.
Yeah. Do you guys ever find there's a point where you just kind of have to let it stand? Like I think sometimes there's been times where I've spoken to someone and so actually, sorry, going back to the actually being really kind about the rules. James in my first game, I forgot to activate my Warlord Supremacy ability, which gives my Crimson Tower Blessed and my Ashen Dawn Hardened 1. And like obviously it was the turn to use it, and it was the one I was meant to do it. I always forget to activate it because you're meant to do it after the Supremacy roll. So I always wait, do the Supremacy roll, then emotionally react to the Supremacy roll and forget to activate my Warlord ability. So I think we went in like, a couple of activations in and he was just like, oh yeah, totally do your thing. And I was just like, thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. And he didn't have to do that because I hadn't declared it, right? In the rules state that you don't have to do that. But James very kindly was like, yeah, go for it, mate. But yeah, do you ever find there's a point of no return where you've gone so far into either the turn or that like, whatever, where you forget, I forgot to do this thing, or I thought this thing was going to happen, but actually it didn't happen that way, where it's like the game has gone on so far that it's just like, we can't retcon this now because then we have to go back like 20 activations and that's just not realistic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's happened all the time.
You just kind of have to live with it, right? You're just
I think there was one particular game, this was using the old scenario pack where you and I were playing, you remember this, stuck in the river, going long ways along the table. And the table was so, it's a 6 foot length. So my units were sort of so spread out up the side of this table that when I was picking up my cards after all their activations, I just didn't pick up my Abomination card. And so I played an entire turn and was thinking, I could have sworn that I have more units than this. And of course it's my Abomination. And so it's missed an entire turn when I'm then collecting the cards and I'm like, I didn't pick that one up last time. So what I should have done, that would have moved. I mean, Abominations, they can make some distance, can't they? That would have changed the whole shape of the game. And so I just thought, I'm not even going to mention it. Just play it from here.
Oh, bless you, man.
I do remember one time feeling a bit harsh because what was it? This was like quite a while ago before we realised if you failed a charge, you lose your next action.
You can't do your second action.
And I remember like I'd like read that rule that week and I was like, oh, we haven't been playing this. And then I remember the next like week, Sam failed like a crucial charge. He was like, okay, it's fine, I'll just move into combat or something. I was like, no, Sam, you like lose the rest of your action. And I remember as well, it like proper screwed you up because you failed. You'd like moved in such a way that then nothing else could charge into me. It's like you couldn't even move back or anything else. You were this like awkward distance away. And I remember being like, feeling like a bit of an arsehole, being like, you're never going to forget this day, Sam. You're never going to forget this rule again. It stands.
I haven't forgotten.
Oh man, I don't know what the answer. Because I guess like if one of us finds a rule and then we don't communicate it to each other at the beginning of the game, and then something happens in the middle of the game, but we've been playing a certain way, I don't know if it's better to like actually just say no, put a foot down so we remember the rule later on, or like wait until the next game before we actually implement it. Do you know what I'm saying? But yeah,
I know we used to like sometimes midweek like post,
yeah,
like
when we
read through the
first
rules
played
in the
the
chat
game,
and then post them in. Guys, I've not been playing this right.
Yeah,
I've been playing
so
this right.
amazing. It's so funny. We talked about being foggy. You talked about being foggy on the rules before, Josh, and like I feel like no one in Conquest still understands what a charge roll like. How the charge actually works, like the movement in the charge. Like, well, I wheel here, and then I move, and then I've got a pivot, but I need to like, it's the how many stands do you put in contact that like remains the confusing part of it, because like you've got to maximize both your stands in combat and their stands in combat, but you can't do a charge in such a stupid way that you're able to like. You teleport a regiment like 10 extra inches to the side. So like you've got to maximize, but it's like it's almost like you've got to like round up the amount of stands you can put in by one, rather than like move them several stands over so that you have loads of. Do you understand what I'm saying?
You've got to have a move that would make sense if they were actually sort of marching in line with each other within the rules of having to wheel forwards and keeping within the limits of their own march distance. Yeah, it's
but yeah, it's always a fun one.
What always annoys me with marches or charges is when people can like just about see the side of your regiment and they're like, I'm gonna charge for your side, and I'm like, yeah, but like we're kind of both like nearly facing each other. Like it feels weird that you're like charging and then like just doing this massive wheel and slamming in the side. I always feel like that one, I'm like, oh, that's the one I want to like get more clarity on, is how like whether you what exactly where you need to be to charge in the side. Because if both of you are facing each other but one of you's just shifted slightly to the left or right, should you be charging into the side, or is it like you're charging into the front but you only got like a little bit of contact, like a corner? Or
Well, Josh, today's your lucky day because I actually have the answer to this. Would you like to hear what the ruling is on that?
Go on, clarify for me.
So you have to charge the flank of the regiment you see. So it has to be the flank, whichever flank, not the flank, but whichever flank of that regiment you charge. You have to be more than half of your regiment needs to be within the front arc of that flank. Okay, so if you're kind of half and half, you get to choose. So if your regiments are kind of like facing each other but like skewed off, like one's further to the right and one's further to the left, if you are charging that regiment, you can see both, you still have line of sight to both the flank and the front, where you are in relation to their arc. So that's like a 45-degree angle both out from either side. If you're mostly within that arc, you get to charge that flank. But if you're mostly within the front arc, you have to charge the front.
Okay, so like if you're drawing a line out from the corner of the like corner stand, if if more than half your stands are like within the front arc, you charge the front, even if that just means like hitting into the corner. And if more than half of your stands are in the flank arc, you charge the flank.
And because it's kind of hard to tell like what constitutes as half of a unit, because the way you rank up for the units, there's a kind of ruling where like if you can see both, then you can charge either. I think that was on an FAQ somewhere, but yeah.
Well, another good example from our friend Phil. I really hope his name is actually Phil.
If not, we're gonna have to have him on the podcast to say sorry.
We were in
We'll give him some
exactly that
WKD.
situation. He'd got his. He had a laser pointer, but he couldn't find it at the moment. So he'd kind of used his tape measure to sort of line it up, and I'd used mine, and it seemed like it was exactly 50% of his stands were in the front and exactly 50% in the side. And he said, I don't know what I should be doing here. Obviously, I want to hit you in the flank.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. Should we just roll the dice? Like 1 to 3, you hit me in the front, 4 to 6 in the side.
Yeah.
And we sort of agreed, well, yeah, okay, that's what we'll do. And he rolled bad. So he hit me in the front. And so he should have been able to choose, shouldn't he?
He should have, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'll give you that one.
Sam,
then,
you
Phil.
monster.
Yeah, I should have been bottom of that table.
Cool. Oh, there we go. Let me just think. Should we end it here or should we chat about something else?
Oh, my only point on losing, and get around to this.
Oh, yeah.
My point, whether I win or lose, I think what annoys me or doesn't annoy me is like whether I made mistakes or not. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, like you kind of called me out in at LGT because like I beat the guy in my second. No, not Southampton. I beat the guy in my second game.
Yeah.
But like I was sitting there at the start of my third game and I realised I'd made like just a massive blunder. I'd had like 2 or 3 turns where I'd had my Thorn Divinity sitting behind my Hierodeacon and 1 stand of Legionnaires. And they were in contact with the other guys like MSU of Legionnaires with his Warlord. And I obviously really wanted to smash my Thorn Divinity in and kill his Warlord.
Yeah.
But my stand was in the way and he didn't want me to charge him. So he was refusing to clash with my stand.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there in this bit of the stalemate. And that's when I ended up sending the Thorn Divinity around the side to, you know, try hit the other guys and then get shot to pieces. And then it was like the start of the second game, final game I was playing with you. And I clocked in my head, his draw event is you can kill a stand. So he should have just killed the stand, wiping out the regiment, and then I could have charged through. And like I think, like even though I won the game, it annoys me that I made like such a big blunder. And you're like, "Shut up, Josh, you won!" Like,
Yeah.
And I'm like,
"Oh, guys, I could have won even better." Yeah.
But I think,
but
like,
you're just in your own head about
like
it.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I think, like if I lose and I felt like I played like pretty much as good as I can play and I didn't make any big blunders, then I can come away and maybe I think, do you know what? I've learned that maybe the list doesn't work or maybe it struggles against that army. I think when I come away and I'm like, oh, I made a massive blunder and I like lost the game because of my blunder. That always like really annoys me. And so, like I'm sure there was one like against you where again, it was like, I think I like hit my
Fallen. When you killed your own unit with your Fallen Divinity.
Yeah, like that really annoys me. I'm like, I probably could have done that game. Or I had another game where I put the token in my Fallen Divinity like at the start of the round in the reinforcement phase, which hit it to tier 3.
Yeah.
But actually, I should have waited and put it in the other pool because then you clashed and then I would have healed it all up. And then later it meant, you know, like small stuff I'm like, I just thought about it a bit more. And I think that's what annoys me about like, so I don't mind losing loads if I feel like I did really well. Yeah. And actually, like, I don't know, if you win all the time, there's like no challenge. Like, I like so some of my favorite memories of playing the game is like back when you used to do your massive block of knights
when we first figured out
when we
that was
first
a thing.
Figured it out, and we're like, so
that was a list that Sam sent me actually. And you were just like, someone won a tournament with this list. I was like, all right, let's do it. And then I think I just point click deleted a big block of Foursquare and Jones. And you're like, this is normally in the game where someone would just concede.
And you were running it 2 stands wide and like 3 or 4 deep.
Because you got more. Because back then you got more impact hits from support than you did from the front because the Warlords thing gave them support 3.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Oh man.
So I just remember like for 6 weeks you being undefeatable and like every week me coming away and like, right, okay, I gotta try something else to beat this. And then when I finally like built a list, and it was obviously so targeted just to counter your list. But I came away and I was like,
Jeff. Right, then something good. Yeah.
But I remember coming away being like, yeah, I've finally done it. Like it seemed what excites me about Sam getting his drum beast out is I'm like, okay, like already in my head, I'm just planning, what am I going to have to do to try and kill that drum beast? Yeah. And I'm like really confident I'm going to lose the first 2 or 3 games to it. I'm going to try someone out. It's not going to kill the drum beast. I'm going to go away. I'm not going to be able to get to sleep that night. I'm going to be like awake, like changing my list. Okay, what if I try this next time? What if I do that? But then like when I finally like, build a list and I'm like, that next week I obliterate the drum beast and I'm like, yeah, like I think that for me, that like, if you don't get a loss, you don't get the overcome. And I feel like for me, like some of the most satisfying thing is that like overcome of like, you met someone, you thought, how can I beat that? It felt so strong. And then you like, worked it a way to like finally overcome it and beat it. And that's like so satisfying.
Nice. Sam just here like, just let me kill things, man.
I mean, honestly, I'm listening to you talk about how confident you are in my ability to kill you with an army that I literally have no idea how to use.
I'm looking forward to Wadru and Sam. Yeah, this is gonna be
I'm looking forward to getting used to it, but I am fully expecting the first time that I take it out, everything's going to be off the board before the drum beast manages to get onto the table. So I wouldn't worry too much.
That's great. Well, on that lovely note, I think it's a good time to end the podcast. I'll do the email this week. So we have an email. If you'd like to send in questions, please do. We're always ears and we always will answer them as long as they're vaguely appropriate to Conquest. Or in fact, they don't have to be like into Conquest. They could be something completely different. But yeah, thank you for listening. Well, our email is joshingaroundinair@gmail.com. So yeah, send in your questions.
Not joshing around at air.
In gmail.com. Right. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
See you later.